You got it. Okay, so now I can participate. Thank you.
Don't make Katrina use this.
Spring fever. Yeah. I'd like to call to order the May 2nd meeting of the New Canaan Board of Education. Good evening, everyone. First, we'll review and approve our agenda for this evening. May I have a motion? Erica, second. Dan, all in favor? Thank you. Moving on. Approval of minutes from our April 18th meeting. May I have a motion? Penny, second. Dan, all in favor? Great. Thank you. Comments from the public. To ensure the public's right to be heard, the board has set aside time during the meeting for public comments. 2 minutes will be allotted to each speaker and a maximum of 15 minutes to each subject. Is there anyone who would like to speak to the board this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on to our reports and recognition. So tonight we have a health program update with Mr. Jonathan Adams, our health and physical education coordinator for the district. Welcome, Mr. Adams. Dr. Correnti, will you introduce him?
Sure, I would love to introduce Mr. Adams. For many of you, he is not a stranger. He has been in front of the board several times, giving us updates on our health curriculum. It's a great pleasure to have Jonathan back here this evening, not only as our Dean of Students over at Sachs Middle School, but also as our K-8 health and PE coordinator. So we're delighted to have him, where he'll give us an update on our district goal and talk a little bit about the implementation of our health curriculum. So take it away, Jonathan.
Thank you, Dr. Correnti, and of course I always start with some gratitude and thanks. So thank you also, Dr. Lutzy, Dr. Pianka, the Board of Education, not only just for your ongoing support, but the opportunity to present tonight about the work that we've done throughout the course of the years that you'll hear tonight also. For our new board members, congratulations. I know that's a little overdue, but first time I'm here with you. In 2020, I shared a presentation with the board. It was a screencastify, given the situation that we were in, so I kind of developed that screencastify, presented it then, which gave a good scope and sequence of the work that we're doing in grades 1 through 12, and I believe that was shared with you also. Over the years, I've presented what we've done, and I think tonight you're going to hear a different voice and perspective from our students and their experience that they've had through our grades 1 through 12. So just to kind of share that with you. Okay. So I, of course, have the privilege of presenting to you, but yet this is not work that is done alone. The execution of this work is done with our teachers. That is in front of our students each and every day. We do have a pretty large department, and I guess they all had other life events tonight except for AJ. So AJ's here with us. But I do have the privilege of acknowledging and sharing Jay Egan, our athletic director and wellness coordinator. Work very closely with him. At New Canaan High School, our health educators and physical educators, Kim Palmer, Danny Melzer, Chris Silvestri, AJ Albana, wave AJ, hey. Kristen Woods. At Sachs Middle School, we have Christine Orlando and Mike Tisha. And at the elementary schools, also Christine Orlando, Mike Tisha, and Timothy Stella. Again, too, just for them, their commitment and their work to our students does not go unnoticed, and I can't thank them enough for their ongoing support and dedication to our students and our program. So what we're going to visit tonight and some of the goals of the presentation is that we will look at the district goals and ways that we've been working to accomplish those goals for this year. I do plan to share with you some of our new board members, our implementation plan, kind of where we started years ago and the evolution of that work and how it's kind of progressed over time. Our vision of health education at New Canaan Public Schools, which for some obviously will be a revisited slide, but it is one that we do look at as kind of our North Star. So we do revisit that each and every time. We'll take a look at some blended connections that we have across the district. Our curriculum review process, how I've undergone that process throughout the years and how valuable it is to the work that we do, and also the execution of the work that we provide for our students. Scope and sequence for grades K through 12. I put in bold, actually, K through 12, because back when we first started this goal, that was the goal, to develop a K through 12 health program. You'll see kind of how this all kind of came about, but it is a proud thing to say by come next year we will have a K through 12 health education program. So that is something that is bolded there and proudly bolded. the Healthy Balanced Living Curriculum Framework, which has been new state documents that have come out. I'll talk a little bit about that. And then you'll hear about the student experience as well. And then some of the next steps and plans that we have moving forward. So accomplishing district goals. Using our UBD, Understanding by Design model, we implement units of study in kindergarten was the goal, and we've started to pilot those and actually develop some of the curriculum behind of what we're looking to implement for next year in kindergarten. So we are ready with that. Researching best models of elective choices for health for high school seniors. This is something that we've been in conversation about and just kind of researching, also talking to some other districts around our DIRG too, to just see what is out there for seniors in terms of expanding their experience and kind of enriching that experience as they go through internships and they go through a whole bunch of different experiences as seniors, and how we can kind of try and think a little bit more broadly in terms of just that grade level too. The evaluation, review, and exploring these. I'm going to go through our implementation and kind of how we directly teach health education from that standpoint. So you'll kind of hear a little bit around that. Our community outreach regarding health and wellness. So I have ongoing conversations, which you'll hear some of the organizations in town that we use also to kind of complement, one, for us to share what we do here in schools in ways that they can complement other things out in the community as well. So you'll hear a little bit around that as well too. And we continue those partnerships with those community organizations throughout the years. So you'll see up here, these are some just dates of the years of our previous presentations, starting all the way back in 2016. So each year, I've had the privilege of standing up here and actually presenting those updates over the course of the years and the work that we've done. You'll see up there is an article. When we started this work, we were way ahead of the game, I would say. Shocking that New Canaan's ahead of the game. But that is something that we were. And when we started to recognize some of the health education programming at the elementary level, it started to gain some national recognition. So we were published in a national journal. And I just kind of wanted to put that out there too, because the work that we've done also is all backed up by research and best practices and the way that we look at health education and the model that we use to teach. Other documents that you see kind of spread across that slideshow there are some of the resources that we provide parents, as we have parent presentations done at the beginning of every single year. And you'll hear about how it first started with certain grade levels and now has expanded out to more of those grade levels. But all of the resources and materials and some of the lesson plans are all shared with parents on that night. They can ask questions to us. They can actually go through some of those lessons. So they have all the information needed. And one of our goals years ago, and it still is today, is to continue to be transparent with the community about what we are teaching so our parents are informed about that. What I have on here too is just some of the organizations too that I mentioned as one of our goals that as I present to the parents and the faculty and some of the Board of Education, some of the community ones that we work with closely is New Canaan Cares. We have the Rams Council, our Lower Fairfield Regional Action Council, New Canaan Coalition, have been ongoing meetings that have taken place throughout the years also. So those of you who've been on the board have recognized this bright red slide that at the time I thought it was good color, and I guess it is, but that's what I'm going with. And what we have here is our students in New Canaan Public Schools will be equipped with the skills necessary to improve their health literacy, fostering the capacity and the capability to make informed decisions in order to lead a healthy lifestyle. Two things in bold there are our skills and health literacy. Two things that you'll see as the foundation and the trademark of the work that we are doing and the approach that we are taking. We align our work to our national health education standards and skills, but it all starts with what's known as our core concepts. That's one of our first standards. Those are some of the topics that we want students to know. So in a comprehensive health education curriculum, you will see topics such as these that are done on the right around personal wellness and personal safety. Promoting an alcohol, tobacco, and other drug-free lifestyle, healthy eating and physical activity, mental and emotional health, healthy relationships, violence prevention, disease prevention. Some of the things as we've expanded on this work is that we take that knowledge, and what I like to say is that we turn that knowledge into what's known as functional knowledge for our students, because the other 7 standards that we have are centered around skills, application and skill acquisition. So this is what we want our students to be able to do, which is analyzing influences, accessing valid and reliable information, building upon their interpersonal communication skills, their decision-making skills, the ability to set goals for themselves, the ability for them to manage their own health behaviors within their own life, and as well as building upon their advocacy skills for themselves as well as others. When you combine these two things of our core concepts as well as our other standards, it all focuses on building what's known as our health literacy and trying to continue to improve upon that as students are acquiring the skills necessary to improve their health literacy. Combined, this produces and prepares students as critical thinkers and problem solvers, responsible and productive citizens, self-directed learners, and effective communicators. This here is our vision that we have stood by since 2016 and continue to revisit over the course of the years that always allows us to stay true to the work that we are doing and shared with you there. So our implementation process, what has kind of happened, how have we done it, and why have we done it? So back in 2016-17, for those of you new, we've identified at that time gaps that were within our curriculum at the time as we planned the goal to develop and align our work K through 12 in health education. And what we recognized at that time was that there was a gap that we had at our elementary level. We actually at those years were not teaching elementary health education. That was one of the biggest things that we saw as a gap there. So we began the curriculum crosswalk, aligned to our national standards, and we started to pilot some elementary lessons, just getting feedback from our students and the teachers in 2017-18. By 2018-19, we've implemented then just grades 3 and 4, and we took kind of a slow approach in order really to gain that feedback and make informed decisions moving forward as we then started to reach out to our grade levels in grades 1 through 4. You'll also see the time frame through that. Obviously, we've gone through some world events as well, but this also hasn't halted or stopped the work that we've done. We've continued to stay true to achieving these goals. We constantly make revisions to our K through 12 health curriculum to best align them to the skills that are being addressed. Why have we done this? Because it was the biggest gap that was identified. So now, as we've kind of implemented through the elementary lens, we're able now to take a look at more of an alignment from a K through 12 standpoint to look at that. We're going to continue to work through colleagues to find through lines and blended experiences, which is what you're going to hear about in a moment. And the health trends might change, but the skills will always be our foundation. So, for example, years ago, you might have seen a health trend that came up on the rise around juuling or vaping or e-cigarettes. However, because we have put this program in place that is focused more on the skills-based approach, we were completely ready and capable in order to start infusing alcohol and drug-free prevention programs as early as 4th grade, all the way now through 6th grade, 8th grade, and then at the high school level. Because it focuses more on decision-making and their communication skills and their ability to analyze the influences around them that you're going to hear about in just a little bit too. So implementation, what we teach for each grade level, this kind of just puts that into context a little bit. We have 10 overall health education lessons taught at the elementary schools throughout the year. This grade's right now 1 through 4, going to be K through 4. We use 3 health teachers that are assigned to each elementary school to deliver the lessons. And we've implemented over the course of the school year, which is in their homeroom class. So we've found that by teaching these lessons within the homeroom class and having the homeroom teacher present, she can always, or he can always, reinforce those skills that we are addressing, because if you think about 10 lessons throughout the course of the year, this may be about 1 or 2 a month. But then if there is maybe a conflict when they're learning conflict resolution in 2nd grade, out at recess, well, then the teacher can actually think about reinforcing some of the skills and just have a little bit more tools in their toolbox and reinforce what we're teaching in the classroom as well. At the middle school level, it's done by trimester or quarter of health education. There's usually 2 classes taught during an entire 6-day rotation. It totals out to be about 16 total lessons for the year. We have 2 certified health education teachers at the middle school. It's done during their workshop class, and it's scheduled usually by their homeroom class, 5th grade, and then similarly 6th through 8th. At the high school level, we do have a graduation requirement of 1 credit of health education. That works out into being about 0.25 a credit per year. So that's about 40 or so lessons per year, and we have a total of 5 health teachers, certified health teachers at the high school level. So as you can see, too, just the progression that's taking place there at the time and that we have with our students, 10 to almost around 20, then to about 40 as they get to high school. So there's a progression actually moving up there, too, which is nice. So we have our blended connections, and this is something too that as we focus on our curriculum work and how to best develop our health literacy for our students, we also look for connections to strengthen those experiences. Some of the work that we do, and I work closely with, is Dr. Susan Bliss. And one of the first connections that we know of is our SAPL, which is our social and academic and personal learning framework, as well as our emotional intelligence experiences that our students gain. We're seeing a lot of blended connections between the skills that we reinforce and teach with our students, as well as ones that are being centered around that framework also. Other ones too, and other individuals that I have worked with Mary Hanna as well as Matt Salvestrini in terms of digital literacy or digital citizenship as well too. So again, a lot of blended experiences that we would see with students within those experiences as well as our own. And we look at time because we have a short window in order for us to develop implement health education. So to provide these connections and these experiences only strengthens that for our students. And as I mentioned some individuals here too, I actually forgot to mention two other individuals that are here tonight, that other coordinators, Sarah Bross and Melinda Meyer, who I just thank you for being here tonight too, and wanted to just recognize them. Sorry. As we continue all of these connections too, it is a focus around the whole child as well to make sure that we have that well-rounded experience for our kids. So this here goes through some of the curriculum review process and some of the systems that I've gone through just throughout the years, and kind of explains it a little bit in detail. So we first start with a health education committee, usually consisting of teachers and administrators, in order to discuss some of the curriculum, the alignment, the trends that we're seeing, skills to be taught, and start thinking about plans and submitting curriculum work to Dr. Correnti in order to start gaining some traction around the curriculum work that we need to develop. One of the things that we did years ago is an elementary parent focus group. So we actually engaged parents in a focus group session to hear their voice about what they found to be important to teach to their students before we decided what we think we should teach to their students. So that was some valuable information that we received. And now that we're at a place of more of a K-12 lens, some of the things that you'll see in our next steps is to engage the middle school parents and the high school parents within those conversations and have those focus groups looking more into next year. As we had then the focus group with the parents, we also then had one with teachers. Typically at this point in time, it was with the elementary teachers and then also the administration in order to gather more of that information. And then I go to the Curriculum Leadership Council, where I am around the curriculum leaders who understand a lot of curriculum writing and best practices and pedagogy around delivering and writing curriculum work. And this is kind of the time and place where after we've worked with teachers, we get to then have that feedback, which is some of the most valuable feedback I think that we can get as curriculum writers from other like-minded curriculum writers in terms of really looking at it from a critical friends standpoint and actually using it to strengthen and align our work as we look forward. And then after all of that is done, we then come here to the Board of Education, present to you some of the work that we've been doing and implementing. Again, create more parent workshops and deliver those, and then the variety of community presentations that I've shared with you as well. This is just a revisit of the vision slide, because as we go through here, you'll see what's in yellow and then as well as what's in green, right? So as I mentioned earlier, what's in green are kind of the core concepts, some of the topics that we approach, and then as well as the skills that are being taught. Through the next slide is basically a nice scope and sequence that we would see from ones that are highlighted in green, which are our core concepts, as well as the skills, and kind of seeing some of the sequence that is being taught throughout the grade levels and reinforced throughout the years too. This isn't just a standalone piece where decision making is only taught in one grade level. You should see a through line throughout some of this that's there. So the screencastify that was shared with you kind of goes through guidelines. It was provided as recommended guidelines, but yet also allowing local control for districts to use those guidelines and develop curriculum that best meets the needs of their community. And as we looked at that, basically the big trend or the theme around that state mandate was around healthy relationships. So I like to title it Healthy Relationships, and what we utilize throughout those lessons are the qualities of healthy relationships, using effective communication and decision-making skills to build healthy relationships, and building healthy peer relationships is a big thing that we focus on. And it's recommended to begin talking early, at an early age, in order to build a foundation for healthy relationships. What was shared with you earlier too about the parent presentations, all of the lessons and the resources that we use for addressing that state mandate is provided to parents. A letter goes out at the beginning of every school year, as well as then an invitation for them to attend our parent presentation, usually held at Sachs Middle School. Next slide was the now introduction of the Healthy and Balanced Living Curriculum Framework, which was just kind of adopted by the state very recently. And I would say that this hadn't been revised since 2006. So 2006 was the last time that we had this document here. So it was long overdue for a revision. Excuse me. This framework here is, again, just like stated about the state mandate, is a recommendation for helping districts to develop curriculum. It's aligned to the National Health Education Standards, and as you can see there at the top, it puts an emphasis on a skills-based approach, which is what we had started back in 2016. There are connections that you'll see here within the framework that are around social emotional learning and the health education standards alignment to that. This is very similar to one of our previous slides in terms of our blended connections that we have to the social and academic and personal learning framework, as well as emotional intelligence. The Healthy and Balanced Living Curriculum Framework is not a curriculum. It is just a framework in order to help guide districts in order to make informed decisions that they feel is best to meet their community needs. So we plan to continue to work with all stakeholders as we will be doing a comparative analysis a little bit between the new state document and the work now that we have basically through K through 12. And that's work that we're excited to actually start to embark upon to kind of see where the state recommendations are and kind of where we are also as a district to ensure that our alignment are to the standards, and we're also addressing the state mandates that are mentioned within that document. So without further ado, I am going to sit back. It's a short video, kind of goes through a little bit of a student lens starting in first grade, moving all the way up into some seniors. And they get to talk a little bit about some of the things that they've learned throughout the years in health education. You can imagine that as we were to video some students, and maybe if you've experienced this yourself, that when you hit the record button, there might have been some laughter or some outtakes, and that could have been a really great video to share. But you might see a student or two getting pretty excited about the fact that they finally got it down the way they intended to. So,
what is one thing you learned about your health this year?
A healthy habit is something you do every day and every night, and that was sleeping. And sleeping helps you get energy for the morning, and it can help you do math and social studies. A healthy habit is playing basketball every single day because it helps you exercise and be stronger.
This year with Mr. Tisha, I learned to go to trusted adults, and that is when you're feeling uncomfortable, you can go to a trusted adult to help you. This year in health, we learned about conflict and ways to solve it.
One thing I learned about in health class this year is to make healthy decisions. One thing I learned about in health class is the triangle of health.
And what are the different sides of the triangle?
One is physical health, social health, and mental and emotional health.
And tell me a little bit about each side of the triangle.
Physical health is how you take care of your body. Social health is how you stay in a relationship. And mental and emotional health is how you think and feel.
An influence is something that affects your decision making, and having positive influences around you can help your decision making and affecting it in a good way, and having, whether your rest of your life or the rest of the week or something, being better. And if you have negative influences, sometimes and almost always, it will probably affect your life in a bad way. And
this year in health, I learned that assertive communication is really important in life, and how to be assertive instead of passive, where you let the other person take control and it's a lose-win. or aggressive, where you let yourself take control, and it's a lose-lose for both of you. But when you're assertive, you're nice to the person, but you're still holding your ground and not letting them like take down what you're the one saying, and that results in a win-win. And that's a skill that everyone has like throughout their whole lives.
One thing I learned in 5th grade health this year is to be socially, emotionally, and physically healthy. They all are sort of related because you're not really happy if you don't have all three.
So from a 6th grade health, I learned that like determination and like grit is very important. One example, we watched a video about Kyle Maynard, who was disabled in some ways, and he was still able to overcome all his challenges despite his challenges with himself. And another thing we learned is about like healthy relationships with people, including like trusted adults, so you have someone to go to and talk to, and also trusted friends, which you can also go to and talk to.
I learned how you need to have good self-esteem to really believe in yourself, and Mr. Orlando taught me a lot of that.
So I think that it's important to know stress management skills because one, it's a good thing to have in like an everyday life situation. Like if you have an issue going on, you can always use them. And another thing is like these are skills that you'll always have. So if you get down the road later in life, you'll still have these skills because stress is something that's going to happen throughout your whole life.
Something I benefited off the most of learning about was probably the influences of drugs and alcohol and what it does to your body and how it can affect your life as a whole. Used the most is being able to identify internal and external influences and how difference can affect you and how it can affect your decision making.
One thing we learned in health was the various aspects of emotional intelligence, such as respect and effective communication. This is really important because we can use this in all aspects of our life, such as building relationships. One way we learned this was by in small groups making presentations and then presenting them to the class.
We learned how to properly identify healthy and unhealthy relationships, and it's important because it can apply to us not only now but for the rest of our lives, no matter the type of relationship. We learned about it by talking about the importance of communication, the warning signs of an unhealthy relationship.
This year in health, we learned about how the teen brain is not fully developed yet, and so we are more susceptible to addiction, and the choices we make now will impact us later in life. Bang!
And in 10th grade health class, we learned about decision making and drugs and alcohol and smoking and vaping and how it's bad for you. And we learned about the pros and cons, and we learned how to handle if you're offered vape or and how you're able to handle that decision.
Learned about healthy and unhealthy relationships. We've learned about this through discussions with our peers, our class, and we've watched videos about the characteristics. And I think that this is really beneficial and applicable to everyone's life because you'll make many relationships through your life with colleagues, friends, family, etc. And so I think that this is something that I'll carry with me for forever.
That we learned in health is the difference between health and wellness, because health is a state and wellness is an ever-changing environment or your state of environment. And this is important to me because you can make small decisions and choices in your life to improve your wellness and then overall improve your health. And we learn this through various activities and self-reflection.
And also something that we learned this year that was really important is how to perform CPR and help those in need. Why it's really important is obviously because if someone's struggling, we're the ones that can help out in that emergency setting. And then also we learned this by going through Red Cross videos, slides, and stuff like that, actually performing CPR on said CPR dummies.
Specifically, one thing I learned was how to set goals and how to set SMART goals in particular. And the way we learned about that was we created vision boards talking about and demonstrating long-term and short-term goals and how we go about that, making sure they're measurable, we know what they are, and that we're continuing to make SMART goals. And it's helped me in my continued pursuit of those goals, and especially in college in the future where I'm making other goals, whether they're health-related or just about my life and future plans.
My name is Jonathan Yu. I'm a junior at New Canaan High School, and recently there was a medical emergency in one of my classes where I responded using the check call care protocol, which we were taught not more than a couple weeks before in health class. And really in a split-second decision, I decided to call 911 in order to help someone who was having a seizure. And it wasn't anything more than what I had been taught in health class that sort of just came to me in that moment. And I'm thankful to the health department for it.
Okay, so a big credit goes to our students that was able to participate within the making of that video. Also, George Petrokopoulos and some of our health teachers helped to facilitate this as well too. So thanks to them as well. So I hope that kind of gives a little bit of some broad strokes in terms of what the students are gaining in their experience in health education.
What is one thing?
We did that already. Some of our next steps that we have that we're looking forward to is one, I mentioned the curriculum crosswalk between the Healthy Balanced Living curriculum framework and our current curriculum. So we're looking to do that. These are some goals that we could start to even embark upon beginning of next year. Engaged in those focus groups with our middle school and high school parents and students as well to gain that student voice. Evaluate the health schedule in grades K through 4, 9 through 12, and continue to explore some of the best models that we have in scheduling for grades 5 through 8. And obviously just continue to periodically communicate with you, the Board of Education, our parents, regarding health wellness in the K-12 program that we have. So again, too, it's always a pleasure to be here and kind of present to you the work, again, another update around health education. More than happy to answer some questions that you have, and always end with a little note that wellness is a journey, not a destination, and we must continue this pursuit for the rest of our life. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jonathan. Appreciate it. Questions? Brendan?
I just want to say thank you for the great work over the years, to you and the team. I've noticed an amazing, transformation of the program. So it's been phenomenal, and I've noticed some among my kids too who have gone up at various levels. I just wanted to ask, when you have this page here where we talk about at each grade what is taught, what sort of determines when we teach various things? Is that something we've done, here in New Canaan, or is that guidance nationally? Is it, research-based, that kind of thing?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. When we have our national health education standards, it's also aligned to certain performance indicators that are recommended. As we gather some of these trends and the data that we might see around students that we feel is important, we use that data in order to inform our decisions that we have here. And it's going to be, I think, valuable work moving forward to kind of see what we've developed, as well as kind of doing that comparative analysis that we'll look at within that state document that has those performance indicators at each grade level. So we look at that, we analyze that, and then we kind of move that work forward in terms of giving that feedback that we get from the parents, from the community, as well as our teachers.
Julie.
Thank you for your presentation.
Sure.
In the skills build health slide, for grade 2, 6, and 9, there is listed mental and emotional health. Can you give me an example of something taught in grade 2, 6, and 9 in that category?
Sure. So in grade 2, students around interpersonal communication learn about some of the ways that they can think about regulating emotions, and coupled with some of those blended experiences that we see within emotional intelligence, and especially also too one of the ways involving peer-to-peer conflict sometimes. So using assertive communication and building upon certain aspects of their communication skills and their body language that they use in order to communicate ways that they can kind of solve those conflicts when they might feel frustrated, right, in 2nd grade. So those are ways there. In 6th grade, we do go into stress and stress management. So these are ways that students learn to manage their own health, and you might have even heard one of the students share some of the things around the skills that he was learning in stress within that. So those were certain aspects of it. Another one, too, in 6th grade, around healthy relationships too is taught in 6th grade too. That's coupled with the mental and emotional health side of things too, which kind of builds upon self-esteem and self-confidence that we see within that. In other grade was, sorry?
9.
Oh, 9th grade is emotional intelligence. You probably heard that was a 9th grade student that was mentioning the skills of emotional intelligence that she's learning and finding valuable. So in our national standards, we have those core concepts that you see that's recommended around comprehensive programs. So you see some of the topics we use, mental emotional health being one, but it can go in more kind of specific things such as emotional intelligence that would be partnered with that.
Sorry, do you want to go? No. Okay. On the framework slide, so I pulled up what the state sends down. How do you go about narrowing down? Because it's I think 81 pages.
Yeah.
How do you go about picking and choosing what you put into the curriculum? Who helps with that? Can you just kind of walk me through that
Sure.
process?
Yep. And again, too, that's a guideline document or guidance or recommendation, but one of the things in the way that we've kind of approached this in the past when we were about to embark upon the elementary was first engage parents, and we developed a parent focus group to kind of hear about, we shared that vision slide with them and talked a little bit around the standards and what those standards are and what they feel is valuable and important for their students to learn about, and what they would want their students to learn about. We share with them the topics that we could teach them about and really what they are feeling is important for our community and their children. From that, then, we're going to plan to do the same thing at the, kind of look at that alignment between the middle school and the high school, too, and kind of gain that parent voice that way. From some of the teachers, too, we also look at data trends that happen just kind of across the country. Like I mentioned, the one that happened around vaping and juuling and drug prevention. So, we see that data and those trends happening just nationally. So that's just some of the pieces around that, too, that kind of helps inform our decisions. That's kind of backed up by that.
Good.
The focus groups. So you've had one for elementary, but not middle and high school. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yep. So far.
Is that something that so you're moving on from elementary to middle and high. Is that something, would you consider keeping focus groups every year for all three?
We certainly could.
Just as trends kind of change, and I think health can kind of be a tricky topic just because there are so many different opinions and.
Sure. I will share that at the parent presentations that we do at the elementary level, it kind of almost turns into a focus group in itself towards the Q&A, to be honest with you. And but that is not to say that we wouldn't still just do a more formal type of focus group to gain that information and to have that. So absolutely.
And how are the parents picked to be in those focus groups, and how do you just kind of get it out there that it's an option?
Yeah. So some of the ways that we did in the past was that we looked to the school administrators, and it was by invitation. And we sent out invitation to several parents based on their recommendation, and we kind of went from there.
Okay. So the admin kind of chooses the parents, and then you send the invite out?
At that point in time, when we were first implementing, that was kind of the process we used, I believe.
And actually, when we did it at the parent workshop, so the first parent workshop that we did, we actually left a sign-up sheet. So any parent that was interested in being part of the focus group had an opportunity to sign up. Awesome. So it was just part of the parent presentation that we had given.
Okay.
Right.
Erica?
Thank you, Jonathan, for coming and speaking to us. Question about the fifth and sixth grade curriculum, or the feedback you've gotten from students. I'm wondering how that may have changed now that you have elementary curriculum feeding into it. Are the conversations different? Or, is the depth of the conversation changed at all?
Yep, it's a great question, and actually some of the feedback that we received primarily from our health teachers. So if you noticed, Christina Orlando and Mike Tisha teach. There are health educators at the middle school, and they also teach at the elementary schools. So they've actually had the opportunity to teach students in grade 1, and now we're in year 6 or so. Now they're entering into the middle school, and our students are like, "Oh my gosh, you're here too!" Like, wow! And so it's something where not only has it improved upon and strengthened the experience that the students are getting because of the relationship they already have with their health teacher, but it also now is helping us to reinforce the skills even more within those classes. So instead, in the past, students would get their first health experience in 5th grade. But now they understand what the great decision-making model is. They understand some of the foundations around effective communication and ways to analyze influences. So then when they actually come into 5th and 6th grade, it's not only just the first time that they're learning that, they're getting reinforcement of those skills. And I like to use kind of like the sports analogy in the way that our program is built, just because if we need to work on our free throws, we need to spend time on that, reinforce that. If we need to work on defense, we need to practice that also in order to get ready for the game. So the more we practice, the more we reinforce these skills, the more equipped and prepared they're going to be to actually utilize them.
Yeah. And on practice, how do we do that in the classroom? And then are there ways that we encourage students to do that outside of the classroom?
Yep. So in the classroom, you would see authentic, real-life situations taking place. One example that I can think of is one that we do in 5th grade, I dare you scenarios. So we have students that are faced with a dare, whether or not, or some peer pressure that they might be getting, and then they actually work it out with their students in terms of developing a assertive communication response. And as they work in triads in order to develop that response, then they practice that using effective communication, body language, eye messages, eye contact. We give examples of what passive communication might look like or what aggressive communication might look like. You might have heard a student mention some of the ways that that creates a lose-win or another lose-lose situation. So we try and actually create that and build that from some of the conflict resolution, the pressure they have to kind of build upon those communications, but they have time to practice it in class, which we hope would be some more real-life situations that they would experience, that they would have.
I'm also interested in social media and the fact that, it's increased in attention and the impact it has on students, and I'm sure that that has an interdisciplinary element with ICT, and there's also the, digital literacy. How does that all play together, and how do you work with the other disciplines to make sure that we're reinforcing messages and some of the positive self-esteem?
Yep. I'd say the work that we do with our colleagues is very fluid and happens very frequently also. So the work with Mary Hanna and Matt Salvestrini, with the work that they do with digital citizenship and the work that we do with health education, is their delivery model is a little bit different in terms of the times that they see students, but we know that in order for them to then reinforce those skills within those lessons as well. One of the ways that we address it too is through their ability to analyze influences, and also it falls onto interpersonal communication skills, but yet communicating digitally in that world too. So we utilize those skills, we communicate them with the other individuals that are involved with digital citizenship, so we know that we can kind of hit it on all sides and kind of strengthen that experience for students.
Yeah. I'm also interested in parent feedback. You had a session in the fall, I think, in the beginning of the year.
Did, yeah.
What sort of things are you hearing from parents?
That session was via Zoom that we did have. But in the past, I would say some of the feedback I've had a few dads say, wow, wish I had this when I was in elementary school. But also, too, it was positive feedback, things that they want to make sure that our students are continuing to experience within the skills-based approach. I think they're very happy to have that approach. I think if we think about our health education experience that we grew up with, it might have been very content-driven and a lot of topics that might be delivered. But this is more around best practices and what we know that's backed up by research to effectively help with behavior change and improving health literacy for students, so they're more equipped and prepared when they get faced with certain situations in real life. So,
great, thank you.
Sure.
Penny.
So this is terrific work, and it's so exciting to see it evolve and to actually see the video with the students talking about their experiences. And from when you were standing here before telling us this is what you were achieving, you were striving to achieve, and to see them speaking, it was wonderful. I was wondering, since it's a skills-based curriculum, how do we assess whether or not the students are getting the skills?
So one, through the experiences they have. A lot of formative assessments take place throughout the lessons that are being developed. And then we're seeing also the sequence that happens too. So we know exactly too when we can kind of checklist certain skills that are being taught at certain grade levels as well too. So we can see, one, the reinforcement that happens over the course of the years. And then just through a lot of the variety that I mentioned earlier of some of these authentic assessments that we want to see students be able to perform for us in class is the best way that we can kind of assess that.
Right. And then I was also interested in the sort of the looking at 12th grade, which I know you're just starting to do, and that transition from high school to college. And one of the things I was thinking when you're doing your focus groups is we get the great students that come back and talk to the Board of Ed every December. And I don't know if they would stick around for a focus group with you in terms of the types of issues and whether or not they felt like they were sufficiently prepared. But that to me would be a focus group I might love to see you add to your list.
That's a great suggestion. Yeah. Thank you.
I didn't know if you wanted to flesh out at all what you were looking to add to that 12th grade experience.
There's been a few things just in terms of trying to gauge student interest. So there might be a student who's really interested in nutrition, for instance, and something maybe that they want to do in that area, and then we would have a teacher that could provide some type of maybe elective type choice, but still fulfills the graduation requirement that we would need. Or maybe someone is really into exercise physiology and something along those lines, or someone's into more public health and community outreach, and how do we kind of gauge some of the lessons in the units around those experiences. That kind of goes to a little bit more of like application advocacy type route. So it's just kind of some of the things that we're hearing from students that they might like to engage in a little bit, and just kind of some of the conversations we're having at the high school level.
Okay, well, I look forward to hearing more about it. Thank you.
Great.
Brennan?
Sorry, just one more. So I've noticed over the years that teachers maybe have just more broadly a better awareness of some of the things that we're teaching in health. So I was wondering if it's probably not universal, but are we actually going out and speaking to all the teachers, across subjects at all the different levels about what you're teaching in health? Or is it just sort of permeating through the schools so that they understand what's going on?
I would say that approach has grown over the years and is going to continue to grow. One of the things that you'll see too is we're making revisions, and you see these revisions is kind of being transparent with the teachers too, so they can kind of understand when and how that's being taught. In the same way that we've done the parent presentations, we've talked about also doing them for teachers in the beginning of, like, say, the school year, during a kind of a PL session or whatnot, just to kind of educate them in terms of what we're teaching. Because as you know, and I mentioned, it's a kind of a smaller time frame that we have to teach these lessons, and in order to educate them a little bit further is something that we're looking into doing even further too. So
yeah, I think that would be great, because a lot of these things are, as you mentioned, things that we didn't learn when we were kids, and it would be good. Good to get out there more broadly.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Julie. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. What grade do you start teaching about alcohol and drugs?
Mm-hmm.
When does that begin?
This is as early as 4th grade. We do that through the lens of analyzing influences in 4th grade. So some of the things that they might see is they understand what a drug is, a safe drug and an unsafe drug, right? A safe drug being something that is going to be given by a parent or a doctor. Unsafe drug being the ones that we know of are of a certain age to consume, right? So we introduce those to students. They are able to look at advertisements around that. A lot of kind of the media messages around, like, say, Juul might look like those are fun and exciting things to use. So we analyze those as influences, as being negative influences in ways that we can kind of understand those things. So that's how it's done at the 4th grade level. 6th grade level, again, introduced, like I mentioned too, when we saw the trends of vaping kind of rise, we knew that we can completely start teaching that through decision making, and then as well in 8th grade and then further in high school too.
Okay. Gender identity, what grade does that come up? Is that in our lesson plans at all? And if so, what grade does that begin?
Currently not.
Is that ever discussed in other classes? Is that something a lot of parents are asking about?
I'd say I get those questions around the human growth and development or the puberty lessons, whether or not we touch upon that. And I would say the parent informational guide that we send has all the information that we deliver to students during those lessons, which they completely have the opportunity to remove their child from that lesson if they needed to, or they wanted to, if they felt uncomfortable, they felt like they wanted to actually teach that to their children. So, but no, right now there is not.
Okay. Last one. Being that we do teach about going to a trusted adult, if there's an issue, if a child comes to either a teacher or an admin or a counselor, and they're in an unhealthy relationship, or there's something going on at home that is not healthy, At what point are the parents notified? Are the parents not notified? If there's like a sexual thing going on, are the parents notified, not notified?
Great question. Right now, one of the things that we do focus on are peer-to-peer relationships. So a lot of the things and scenarios that we kind of build upon are some that they would experience more in school, and the trusted adults that they could look to find are the ones in the home, the school, or the community. So almost every year they identify some trusted adults that they have, because that overall web or that circle of trusted adults that they have is going to change throughout the years too. So as they move through that and they kind of identify who those trusted adults are, if they feel that they need to go to them because they have identified that they're in an unhealthy relationship, they have that resource that's available to them. Anything then that, say, would be more serious in nature, where we would need to identify or call the parents in situations like that, of course, we keep those lines of communication open.
Thank you.
Sure.
Go ahead, Erica.
Sorry, I just had one more question. I know that vaping has become increasingly an issue in the schools, and I was wondering, tobacco use, cigarettes, that has gone down dramatically. We've managed to teach largely our children that they don't want to do that, and they're largely not doing it. What are the efforts underway to sort of create that same environment for vaping, to discourage kids from experimenting with it?
Is to prepare them with the skills necessary when presented with the offer to use it. They understand how dangerous it is, they know how to effectively communicate, and they know how to make the right decision outside of that. And they can actually analyze the influence, that this is a negative influence on my health, and they know to actually make an informed decision based on that. And we try and help them to develop that confidence so that when they are presented with that situation, they're able to do that. So instead of just learning that vaping is bad for them, they actually learn the skills to equip themselves when presented in a situation or being around a situation that might involve vaping.
So that's a good segue to my question. So in terms of the trends, I see, and I think the drug and alcohol conversation is a good example for my question, but because of the trends, if we teach it in 10th grade, are we tracking it to make sure, is there some reinforcement or repetition that we may place value on to, reinforce those messages as kids, move on to junior and particularly senior year as they think about college? Because at least in this example, anecdotally, I'm hearing that the vaping messages are out there, and now cigarette smoking is on the rise in college, on college campuses. So are we able to provide that repetition and that reinforcement of some of these messages for some of the trendier topics?
Absolutely. I mean, I think as soon as we see a trend on the rise, we can easily weave that into any part or piece of our curriculum. So example, if it's on decision making that students are learning, and then something we see is on the rise, well, we can immediately create an authentic scenario based around tobacco use and trying to provide more of a preventative measure in order for them to do that, for them to utilize the skills of decision making within those scenarios, while also learning about the dangers and the harmful effects of tobacco use, right? So it's all there, but the skills are the foundation that are going to help to prepare them for situations like that, while identifying what unhealthy behaviors are.
Okay, and I like the idea, and I think you mentioned doing it as well, of just seeking the student feedback, both current students and perhaps alumni students, on what's on their minds, what are they having issues with, and continually revisiting through their lens too, because I think sometimes they're the first point of entry for a new trend locally, anyways.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, it's a great suggestion. Something I'm looking forward to.
Right. And then just in terms of the timing for the new framework, the new Healthy Standards framework, what is the expected timing for that? And I imagine you mentioned the beginning of next year.
You're talking about the state document?
The state, yes, implementation of that. Well, development and then implementation of that.
Right, yeah. So really what we're going to do, I mean, feel pretty confident that we are, like I said earlier, kind of ahead of the game in terms of when that state document came out. What we plan to do is kind of, like I mentioned, a comparative analysis between what the state document's offering, and they have kind of an evaluation tool a little bit to hold up against what a district curriculum might look like too. So we look forward to seeing if we see any gaps maybe that we're missing, and ways that we can kind of put them in, and then also see a lot of strengths within our curriculum as we kind of put it against that framework. So that can happen as early as summer with some curriculum work over there, and then as well as into next year too. But yeah, that's definitely something that we're looking to start.
Okay. Well, we'll look forward to an update on that.
Thank you. Yeah.
get to come back again.
I can't wait.
It's always great to have you here. Penny.
So when I was door knocking this fall, I had one friend who said to ask this question. So I thought, actually, it's an opportunity. Her son was gay, but never felt supported enough when he was at the high school to come out. And so I was just wondering, what are we doing to make certain that all students at the high school feel safe and supported in their own personal decisions and sexualities? That's sort of a loaded question at the end of years, and it's complicated, I realize.
Sure, yep.
But I just thought, I was wondering how we were treading through those grounds.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It is definitely something that we're looking further into. And again, too, I think it's even more that as we gain more kind of student voice and parent voice around some of the topics that we see around that, I think will be something that we'll have further discussions about. Definitely, the lessons and the program that we teach is an inclusive one. It is definitely one that is accepting and, one that, provides, I feel, a well-rounded experience for all of our students. So, but some of the topics that you're mentioning there, too, are ones that I think we need to open up more of a discussion about.
I would just add, Penny, to that. When we're teaching students to recognize trusted adults and to identify people who who they can talk to. That doesn't mean it's only the health teachers, right? They're teaching them to see that across. And I know the high school for years has been working through its advisory program, its connections program, where every student is in a small group and they have an opportunity to work with and talk to a teacher who's non-evaluative. They don't get graded in connections or anything like that. It's meant to be again, a relationship with a trusted adult that they meet regularly and they're able to work through things. So certainly our counselors are extremely well trained in all of this in order to support and help students if they feel they have somebody they need to talk to. But it's part of a school climate and culture, creating a space where all students feel accepted and engaged and welcomed. And it's ongoing work in every school forever, something you can always do better and better in the working on.
So I guess it's actually interesting because I came to look at the climate survey today, and there were some questions on it. So I don't know if when we actually get those results, if the data can be provided on some of the questions around those types of issues, or just people feeling like, people are respectful of differences and things like that. Like that was definitely a theme. So when that gets done and kind of reported back, I think it might be somewhat instructive for the board to kind of dovetail that into this discussion as well.
Yeah, definitely. That's something that Dr. Bliss does for us, and we'll pull all of that together, and also we'll be developing some action goals around the results as well. So it's a very useful feedback for us to plan forward.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate the updates.
Thank you again. All right, appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Letzi, you have an update on healthier start times implementation.
Absolutely. And thank you for coming. All right, so to transition here, just thought that we'd put a few minutes aside to give a brief update and to check and see, certainly open up a forum for conversation or questions or anything from the board. As you may have had an opportunity to read or may not, there was an update that went out just prior to our Board of Education meeting tonight. Just to give folks an update, there were some questions that were around, and now that we're through the budget process and we're able to catch our breath a little bit, I wanted to send out notification of sort of what the planning is, where we are, and do some pointing forward. So moving away, the rest of the information that's in the update, just focusing on the start times. So Roy has continued to work through the scenarios and to fine tune the runs, and he'll continue doing that. But right now the times are for Tier 1, which is the high school and the upper division at Saks. There's still 8 o'clock till 2:30, so 6 hours and 30 minutes there. At the 3 elementary schools, he's been able to get it to 8:35 as a start time with a 3:10 ending. So that's excellent. That's a 35-minute swing in the morning. It is 40 minutes in the afternoon, And that really has to do with the way we dismiss at the high school, where the end of the day, the bell rings, and then the students are really given 8 minutes to get to their bus, and the buses roll. So that end of the day time at the high school is 8 minutes later, which then, of course, makes it all that much tighter to get back to the elementary schools. So the thinking is that the classes would essentially end at 3:05, and students would go line up for their buses. And as they arrive, they would be able to jump on the bus and get rolling. So we're using 3:10, but that's just a target right now, and it may shift a little bit. May get a little earlier, may not, depending upon the ridership. Because also, as we're doing the routing, we're assuming that all the students are riding, but as elementary students don't ride, that we'll be able to maybe tighten that up just a little bit. And then the final tier is the 9:15 to 3:45, tier 3 for our lower division over at SACS, our grades 5 and 6, which is back to 6 hours and 30 minutes for the timing. One of the challenges, when we think about the elementary schools and moving them to the middle, is right now East and West, they're the final tier. So as they load the buses, there's nowhere else for the buses to be. It can take a little bit more time. We're going to be training our K-4 students to get on those buses and get those vehicles rolling so that we can make the times as we're building them out. But, it's one of those things, you plan it all out, you get as tight as you can, but you don't know exactly where it's going to be until you actually run the buses. But Roy's doing a fabulous job as always. Included in the information, of course, a 2-hour delay is simply 2 hours later. An early dismissal is 2.5 hours earlier out. And we'll share more information as we get a little closer. But the one exciting thing that we're able to do, given the way that we're building out this new plan, is we'll continue to run the late buses for high school and 7th and 8th, and that'll still run at 4 o'clock. So high school students, if they stay after for extra help or anything like that, they can jump on that late bus. We can have anywhere from 1 to 3, depending on how many students need it. And those are drivers that really know the town well. So essentially, students get on the bus, tell them where they live, they keep track of it all, and then they will just route it out as it makes the most sense. And can typically take students right to their door, unless, of course, they're down a cul-de-sac and buses can't go down, whatever. But they do a very good job with that, and we've offered that service for a while. What we're doing with the new plan is adding in additional bus service. We're calling it the sports bus, we call it the activity bus, for students that stay past 4 o'clock till about 5:15. So those buses will roll at 5:15. Same way, the students will be able to meet them in the back. It's just for high school students. But we found that there could be a need for students, certainly underclassmen, staying after school for sports or other activities. And 4 o'clock is just not long enough for them to have their practice or go to the rehearsal or do those things. So a 5:15 pilot to see if there is really a need is something that we can build into our plan. So we're going to give that a try in the first marking period, first semester, and see how the utilization is. As long as there's some students using it, we'll keep rolling that. And I think that will be helpful for families and for students to give them a way to get home. The before and after school programming, as you know, this is something that we've been working on. And so I've been in communication certainly with the Nature Center, with the YMCA, with Right at School, with Park and Rec, and wanted to just give people one place where they can go with links to go right to the registration pages. As you know, some of the programs fill up very quickly. So I did in conversation with Bill over at the Nature Center and with Davey over at the Y, they sent me the little links and a blurb, and just wanted to share that with the community to make that very easy for people looking for those after-school activities, or with Right at School, the before-school activity for our lower division, the 5th and 6th graders. I also mentioned in it the early bird programs. We're not sure what the need's going to be. At 8:35, there's not an awful lot of time there. We run the early bird right now for East and West because they have a 9:05 start. If parents do have a need at the elementary school, we'll get that information in and we'll get a program off the ground for them. It's self-funded, so we just want to make sure that we don't build something and have nobody using it. But as long as there's a need, we'll fill that need, and do that with families. So, but 8:35 may just be early enough that there's not one. So we'll just have to see how that shakes out. And we'll gather that information and make a decision over the summer. The transportation page on the website, Roy has been doing an excellent job also creating FAQs and answering them and then putting them up for people to look at and to learn from. So I put the link into the email as well. Again, I would just caution, the information's changing as we get closer and we refine what we're doing. So For instance, there was the start time of 8:40 was posted on the FAQ just a week and a half ago or so. But in working it through with Roy and taking a look, and he did a couple of things, he was able to get it to 8:35. So take a look to learn, but just don't, it's not definitive to the minute because we're routing about 3,600 students on 50 buses, and there are many variables that we have to work through. Okay. One last thing, and then certainly glad to answer any questions. Actually, two things. One is we learned from DATCO that our buses are in. So the buses that we ordered in order to be able to do this, they've come in and they're working through any final pieces with that, but we're all set there. So that's a big stressor off our shoulders there because no buses, no change. And then the second thing is we're working on piloting an app for families that will allow people to actually track their buses through their phone. So through the GPS on the bus, it runs through a system and you can see where your bus is and even set it up to send an alert when the bus is 2 minutes or 5 minutes or however close to home in the morning and the afternoon. I was hoping we would have it ready to roll and I'd be able to include it in this update. It just isn't quite ready for prime time, but it's close. And we just have a few more things to do to make that work, make sure that communication flows through. But by downloading the app, no charge, you could follow the bus, see where it is, see how close it is to home, and get that alert that if you're 20 minutes from home and the bus will be there in 2 minutes and you've got a kindergartner, you'd better call someone. Right? So, but I think that'll help. We think that'll help for families as we make this change, especially because there's going to be new runs, new buses, new routes, because that's all has to change based on the changes that we're making. So this should help smooth that transition a little bit. And as soon as it's ready, we'll send something out and encourage people to sign up.
Great, thanks for the update. Questions? Dan?
When is the next implementation committee meeting, or is there another one scheduled? Just like if there's parents that just got the update that might want to either participate or have further questions, I don't know if that's a forum for some community feedback.
At this point, if folks have some specific questions, I'd encourage them they can reach out to me directly. We've been meeting regularly, sort of working through those details around the implementation. If they have other, concerns or other things, I think that's probably the best way to begin. If there seems to be bigger questions that we need to work through, we can certainly pull a group of people together and do that.
Erica?
Likewise, for the overall community, outside of those that receive your emails, how are we communicating with the dance studios, the theater, the outside of school sports, all of them?
Mm-hmm. So the communications we were a few months back in the fall where we were communicating with the different groups. As I mentioned, I met with the Y, the Nature Center, and some of the others. We will be notifying them to let them know, of those changes, and certainly Jay through our athletic departments letting the youth sports leagues know, and people are sort of outreaching that way, Alan Sneath and different things like that. So we can formalize it if need be, but I believe word is getting out.
Okay. I also was wondering for the Early Birds program, it sounds like it's pretty flexible, so I was wondering how do we staff that? It's people already in the building who come an hour early.
Yep.
So if we need to move it up or down, or let's say for the elementaries, people aren't looking for an hour, they're looking for 45 minutes. All of that, there's a lot of flexibility there.
For our early bird program, there's some, and it's existing staff. So it would typically be a teaching assistant who would come in early, be paid for that hour, and then the tuition that folks are paying would essentially offset that. The timing, generally they're coming in about an hour before the start of the school day, maybe a little bit before that. They could come in for less period of time, but there does come a point where, it can't be necessarily 15 minutes and make it work financially, around all of that. So those are just the considerations.
Got it.
Yep.
All right, thank you. I just want to, in case he's watching, give a shout out to Roy and say thank you, because I know he's been hard at work for years, but it's a different kind of work now because it's happening. And I know he's been busy sending emails about opt-ins at the high school, and I know the app is taking some time as well, and I look forward. I think it's great. It's a great addition, something that I think will be very helpful to parents in the future. So thanks, Roy.
As he reminds me often, 32 scenarios.
Yeah.
Persistence.
Yeah.
32.
All right, so we'll move on to an update on the summer programs. Dr. Correnti and Mr. Tesber.
Sure, I can get started, and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Tesber. So we have 3 main summer programs that we support in the month of July. So the first summer program is our Summer Enrichment, and that is run by a camp. So the students have the opportunity to sign up for a week-long camp. And the camps will range from 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock or 9 o'clock to 2 o'clock. We have about 365 students already registered for summer camps. We'll probably go up to about 550 students. And the camps really range. Some of the most popular camps that we have is the college writing essay. And that's usually actually in June for all those juniors that are rising seniors that would like to get a jump start on their college essay. And it's very, very helpful to the students to have that being offered to them, and then they'll work throughout the summer and get feedback and then continue to work on it in the fall. We also have our Top Chef and our Top Chef Junior classes that are very popular to our students. We have a few robotic classes that have grown and some coding classes. We still offer American Girl Doll Camp. It happens to be one of the most popular camps still for some of our youngest students. And believe it or not, we're still offering the Hop on the Hogwarts Express. So we do still have Harry Potter fans out there, and the kids, it's one of the camps that gets filled up very fast, and the kids all get off into one of their houses, and they do all sorts of activities throughout the week. And so we're very excited. We're always offering art classes. We've got like Glam Squad and Discovery Arts and hands-on arts. So a wide variety of classes. So the summer enrichment programs are going to be housed over at Sachs Middle School. And that's the only program that will be at Sachs this year because they're in the process of redoing all the floors. And so we're just going to use the new wing of Sachs where the STEM labs are and the art rooms are, and it will be very appropriate for the camps that need to be in that section of the building. And then the other place that will have the camps is over at South School. So normally we have the summer enrichment programs over at East, but the floors are being done at East as well. So East and the majority of Sachs will be off limits for our summer programs this year. And we're very excited in watching those registration numbers grow. And usually throughout the summer, Mr. Bruce and Mr. Gillian, who manage those programs for us, will give us an update. They'll usually send some pictures and you know, let everybody know how those camps are going. And I know there's still a little bit of enrollment left, so you can get on the district website and sign up still. The other camp that we offer is our Summer Achievement Academy. So this camp began last year, and it was through our grant funds of our ARP, which is the American Rescue Plan Act, ESSER. And so that money, there were 5 priorities, and one of the priorities was really helping students who might have had learning loss or social emotional loss during COVID. And so we did an outreach to families that we knew were students that were impacted by learning loss. Maybe they were frequently absent, or maybe they were remote for the entire year. Or maybe they were just having a hard time meeting benchmarks, or maybe they were just struggling socially and emotionally. And so we had reached out to students last year, and we had about 54 students who took us up on the offer. It is a free program because it's being funded by grants, and it's run by our classroom teachers at the elementary and middle school. It's a K-8 program. And it starts about 9:30 and goes to 12:30. So we're very creative with how we get the kids there, as we've got our summer enrichment program that's starting at 9. And so we've got another program that's coming in at 9:30. And that will also be housed over at South this year. So South will be bursting at the seams with students. And right now, we've sent out a few interest surveys. We have over 100 students who are interested in attending our camp this year. And the number has grown at the middle school. So last year, the bulk of the students was at the elementary level. It continues to still be at the elementary level. but we've had an increase of kids who are interested at the middle school level as well. And when we say that 100 number, we also give a lot of flexibility. So they don't need to sign up for all 4 weeks. So that 100 will say that somebody might want to come for just week 1, or somebody might want to come for week 3. So we do offer a lot of flexibility, because anything that we can offer to our students is most helpful. And it turns out to be a lot of fun. The teachers who run the program, they're right in the classrooms, and yes, there is some reading and there's some math and writing that goes on, but there's a lot of fun, like traditional kind of camp activities that they do, and really had a lot of excitement last year. So they develop a schedule and they have all these different activities that they do. So we'll be getting those final registration numbers as well, and giving you an update as we continue to move through the process. And then the other program that we have this year is the Summer Enrichment Program, and that will be housed at West and the high school. And I'll let Bill talk a little bit about that program.
So for the special ed students, we have the extended school year program, and the eligibility for that is determined by a PPT. So students, the team sits around and discusses whether or not a student requires the extended school year. They look at 2 factors. They look at regression and recoupment. So they look at whether or not they think a student will regress more than the typical peer would regress over the summer. And then they also look at recoupment. So when they come back to school in the fall, if they're away from school and away from their programming for the entire summer, will it take them an extraordinary amount of time to recoup and get back to where they were before they left in the spring? The other factor that they look at is the overall complexity of a student. Our most complex students tend to be eligible for extended school year programming. During the summer, they typically receive all the services that they would get during the school year, just the amount of time is reduced for those services. The point is not to necessarily introduce new learning while that happens during the summer. It's more about maintenance and keeping up with the learning that the students have in place. The program runs for 4 weeks. It starts in June 27th and goes through July 21st. It runs Monday through Thursday. We used to do Monday through Friday, but we found that students and parents like those long weekends on Friday, so attendance was a little bit lower than we would like, so we narrowed it down to Monday through Thursday. In the morning, it's scheduled depending on the age range. It goes from 8 to 12, so the older students will start at 8, and then the younger students start a little bit later, around 9. Students may come for that entire session, a 4-hour session, or they may come twice a week for 2 hours each time. So it really depends on the individual needs of the students. This year we're located at the high school and West. I think the preschool is staying at West and some at South. So we're kind of spread out throughout the district, but that's okay. As you would imagine, there tends to be more students at the elementary level than at the high school level. Though listening to Jill describe the popularity of the other programs, it may be a tough sell to get students to come for the ESY versus the summer enrichment. But we will be there to meet the needs of the students with special education needs. So.
The only thing I would very briefly add is simply, as a young teacher, I got my start doing this. We also have our credit recovery program at the high school, where for students who middle school, high school, maybe they didn't do as well in a class as they had expected, to earn their credit, to recover the credit. So traditional summer school, essentially. We're really the only program in the area, so we'll have students come from Wilton, other districts right around, and sign up for that as well. So we run that, I think, 4 days a week in a block schedule. Actually, we piloted the block schedule there well before we did it at the high school, and works very well.
I think they streamlined it to 3 weeks and 5 days.
It is 3 weeks, 5 days, and they'll be running it at the high school. They do have a little bit longer of a day.
Is that what they did, 3 weeks?
Yeah, and they'll stay till 1 o'clock. So.
There you go.
What's the average size of that group?
It can range from anywhere from 7 to 10 students who will join the program. And like Brian said, they're from surrounding towns and communities.
Yeah.
It's another one where you need the enrollment to run the class, but they'll group them together. So if you've got 9th and 10th grade students that need English credits, for instance, you can put them in the same class with one teacher and do work differently that way. But you have to have taken the class before you're in the summer school program. 'Cause you can't obviously do a whole year's worth of work in 3 weeks, 5 days. For many hours.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you for the updates. Questions? Erica?
I was wondering, for the extended school year, do you find that most of the students that you offer it to take it, or is it less than that?
Yeah, I would say the vast majority take it. There's been, in the last couple of years, there's been, I think, a lower acceptance because everybody's just tired and they wanted a break. But historically, I would say about 90% of the students we offer it to take it.
Great, thanks.
Yep.
All right, thanks.
I would actually have one question. I hear from my colleagues frequently how difficult it is to staff for the summer. How are we doing as far as staffing and commitments from our staff to return?
We're, in terms of the special ed component, it has been a challenge. Bob Rousseau, who has gone above and beyond and recruited from all over the area to find staffing. But it has definitely been a challenge to find staff. We've had to reach out to some agencies to, get PTs and OTs. But we'll have the appropriate staff. By hook or by crook, we'll get it in place to make sure that we can meet the needs of students. But it's been a challenge for sure.
Can I just add that Bob started a month ago, so I've been hiring extended school year staff for a month already, and I'm really happy to say that even though maybe we have some of our teachers who aren't as willing to work in the summer as previously they wanted to, we are recruiting people from other school districts to come here locally, and I think it seems like I'm having 5 interviews a week, so I think it's going relatively well.
And we've been very successful. Certainly, the summer enrichment camp runs based on the interest of the teacher. So there will be a teacher that will come forward that say, I'd like to run the chef class, and that's the teacher that runs the chef class, and certainly, so we don't have a problem with the summer enrichment. With the Achievement Academy, it's actually been really wonderful for some of our general education teachers who aren't qualified to teach in the extended school year program because they don't have the special education certification or some of the requirements. Some of our reading specialists might teach in the extended school year program, but they're certified in Orton-Gillingham, and so they have a special skill that they can bring to that and work with our students. But not our general education teachers don't always have the qualifications that you would need to do the direct instruction to a student who's been identified with special ed. So they've been very excited to kind of come over to the Achievement Academy. We're still working on getting a few more middle school teachers, but with Jonathan, who actually oversees that program up at the middle school, I think he's doing his own recruitment. So we usually do find our own staff that are willing to do so. And we actually do the Achievement Academy on a 4-day model as well, because we ran into the same issue that extended school year where people really wanted the extended weekend.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to our action item for the evening. The Governance Committee is back at it and working hard on reviewing policies. And the first one to bring forward is policy 5010, eligibility to attend New Canaan schools. Dr. Ellis, did you want to provide some context, and then we'll talk more about it?
Yep, and I'm certainly glad to talk any more, and anyone's welcome to jump in as well. What we're looking at is a relatively small revision to the policy 5010 that we do think will make a difference. And essentially what it's doing is aligning the language of the policy with state statute. We had been a little bit more permissive, and this sort of squares it back to where the way statute defines residence and eligibility to attend. And the change is we removed language in the draft that said that children of separated or divorced parents with joint custody may attend schools in New Canaan if one parent resides in New Canaan. Because the statute says residency shall be defined as full-time occupancy of a New Canaan residence by at least one parent and the student, and that's the statute language. So by removing that, it returns to the statute language to say that the student must be considered a full-time resident of New Canaan in order to be eligible to attend New Canaan schools. We also made a small change in it's the third to the last paragraph, where it says persons over 21 are not eligible to attend public school. We added in persons over 21 unless participating in special education services until age 22. And that, again, is aligning us with statute, as we've discussed, I think, earlier, about that change in special education law that allows students to remain in our program until they age out on their 22nd birthday. And those are the two changes.
Thank you. So at this time, I'll ask for a motion to approve as a first reading revised policy 5010, eligibility to attend New Canaan schools. Brendan, second. Dan? And then now, any discussion or questions on the policy?
Just thought it might be helpful for the board to understand how it is that New Canaan defines full-time residency.
Sure. So when we've looked at this, the guidance has been that full-time is considered where an individual where the student sleeps 4 nights a week. So it's really that majority of the time. It doesn't mean that all the time, but it's that majority at 4 days. And it's 4 out of the 7 days. What days of the week are irrelevant? It's just that majority of the time. And again, that's aligned with state statute. And the policy itself, we'll make sure it's up on our website as in the Board of Education materials section, if anybody would like to take a look at the revision. If there's any feedback, I think the governance committee would be willing to meet again if the board felt like that was important for that discussion. So you're welcome to reach out if board members are interested in doing that.
Can you also send around maybe for the full board the AR?
Regulations?
Yeah.
Yep.
Just because there was.
Sure. So behind this policy, there are some administrative regulations, ad regs, and those really are the forms that folks would fill out if they are if they're residing in New Canaan, maybe if they're a guardianship situation or things like that. So yeah, I can send a whole package around. So you have the whole.
If we do the second
package.
reading next time, people have a little more context, and if there's questions, we can deal with it then.
Sure.
Yep. And then as we'll have a number of policies coming through the governance committees in process of reviewing several others. And with all policies, we have 2 readings. So next meeting, if there's any questions or even before then, certainly reach out to someone on the governance committee with your questions, and we'll make sure to get answers back.
Perfect.
And I think the other thing we were suggesting, we're going to let the full board know of the meeting so that if anyone did want to participate or at least even raise a question, they don't want to participate, but say, hey, we'd like to, could you discuss this? Like, they'll at least know about the meetings.
Perfect.
All right. Comments from the public? Okay, moving on. No comments. Announcements and future business.
Sure. Our next meeting is May 16th, so 2 weeks from tonight, and we'll be talking about standards-based grading, statement of accounts. We'll be going through a couple of things. I know we're meeting with Joe in the interim to get an update on the performance of our health insurance plan and be able to talk about that a bit with the full board. I do want to just share, it's been in the news recently, we are seeing a little bit of an uptick in COVID cases. Our nurses are doing a wonderful job staying on top of all of it. Just as of today, we've got 70 cases. It's 18 staff and 52 students across the district. So we're staying on top of it, but just want to remind that test kits are widely available at all 5 of our schools. We've got thousands, so if anyone needs them, just to call the nurse, go pick it up, and it's all yours. And just, again, simple precautions can make a big difference, like opening a window, like being outside, those kinds of things can really help all of us, and that vaccinations remain available through the New Canaan Health Department. So just to know we're keeping an eye on it, and if anyone wants any of those tests, they are readily available. We don't want to store them over the summer. So I hope that we can move these out. They do have an expiration date on them of June, but the Department of Public Health has pushed that out 3 months to say that they're good through into September. So if you want them, just call and come and get them, please.
All right, with that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Dan, Penny, all in favor? Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.